Hello, just woken up in the morning in a beautiful forest. I've got a nice hot cup of coffee in my hands, and last night we made our meal using our electric cooker. But I did use gas this morning for one thing. Not that I had to, that I chose to. So here is my final conclusions when it comes to induction cooking. I'm going to broaden the discussion just a little bit. When we talk about induction cooking, we are automatically assuming that we are using large inverters to produce large amounts of AC current to run cookers. Our use of AC is not just confined to that if we have a big system. For example, here I have a 3 kilowatt Victron inverter, and it charges, if I plug it into shore power, inside the same system charges it. So it's very convenient. I don't have to go to the store and buy gas. I plug it in at home when the sun is shining, because I have a very large solar array on my home, so I charge my batteries before I leave on a trip using sunlight. Of course, while I'm on a trip, I'm using the engine's alternator, and I'm also using solar blankets. So I'm using a combination of renewable and fossil fuels to recharge those batteries. I like the idea of using renewables when possible. I'm not a renewable nut. I just think it's the future. It is the future. It's the progress and the process of getting there that is sometimes more damaging than it needs to be. Electric cooking has one major advantage over any other kind of cooking, and that is pure speed and convenience. To set up our electric cooker takes me, 30 seconds to plug it in and turn it on, if that. And once one gets used to inversion cooking, it's brilliant. It's very easy to control, and very importantly, actually, it's very easy to clean. However, I have one inverter cooker. If I needed to now cook a sauce with, for example, a pasta, I would have to either pre-cook the pasta, pre-boil the water, and then set that aside and then cook, because I've only got a single burner. I shouldn't use the word burner. Burner refers to a gas burner. So we're going to call them cookums. We'll call them cookers. If we have now plug in a second one, I have a 3000 watt inverter. As I have mentioned, I could run two simultaneously. I don't have two in the car. So the question is, did I need to go to a 3 kilowatt inverter? Well, yes and no. If I had purchased an inexpensive inverter claiming 3 kilowatts, remember that 3 kilowatts it's only going to deliver 3 kilowatts at normal temperatures. If we have a high ambient temperature, then that ability to deliver that AC current to its amount specified written on the box reduces. So it's again a value thing. So the Victron is very good. It will produce the advertised power. So I could use two burners. But I don't have one because I don't feel like carrying one, because it's so rare that we ever use one. And so if I want to boil water, I use my MSR reactor, which is a jet boil style water boiler. Incredibly fast, and not much faster than the induction at boiling water. I've made the comparison, but far more efficient. Boiling water with an induction cooker uses a lot of energy, and because it uses a lot of energy, I therefore need bigger batteries to cope with it. So the measurement therefore is, okay, how big do I need my inverter to be? My recommendation is that you get the highest quality, not less than 2 kilowatts, okay, of the highest quality. All right, you want to be sure, spend a little bit more weight, get a 3 kilowatts. Really, you're not going to need more. I have even done a test with this inverter, and before we left on our Canning stock Range Rover trip, and we tested it, and we could do welding using this inverter, because it's such a good inverter. It could deliver the current, sustained current, enough for welding. I don't need to have I don't have a welding kit in my car. I don't actually need the 3 kilowatts. Doing what I'm doing, generally speaking, I don't need 3 kilowatts. But I would definitely need 2. Right. If I'm now cooking a lot with my burner, which is really nice because if it's windy, wind doesn't affect it at all. Incredibly easy to clean, which gas burners are not. Awful things to clean. But I need to find the energy somewhere, and I need to store it somewhere, and I need to find a means of getting the energy back. So because I can't drive to the gas, the hardware and buy gas, I have to recharge my batteries. So now I'm on my trip. I'm driving a reasonable amount. My alternator, I have 2 30 watts DC-DC chargers. Very efficient energy being transferred from the alternator into the battery. And the only efficient way of doing it is with direct charging. That's direct current to direct current charging. So that's an expense. You now are going to need a larger one. Now at the moment, with my current system in this vehicle, with the standard alternator in the Land Cruiser V8, I am at the absolute limit of the alternator's ability to do its job. Because while it's driving, there might be, it might be raining, I've got my lights on, my DC-DC chargers are going flat out, I've got my amplifier going in the car, I'm listening to some music. That alternator is working flat out. Actually, at times, the DC-DC chargers, being smart ones, may decrease the charge to the battery because of potentially overloading the alternator. It's sensitive to that. And there are cut-off systems. I don't want the thing to cut off. I might be just doing, today for example, I'm probably only doing about 60 kilometers. So that's not going to replenish probably all of the current that I've taken out because we cooked last night. And of course, my fridge is running. Sorry, I'm rubbing my hands and things like that because there are a lot of mosquitoes around and they're trying to bite my hands. So I don't know for sure if I'm going to get the current back into the battery. So I might have to use my solar blanket to supplement it. With enough solar blankets, you can stay indefinitely at one place as long as the sun is shining and do all your cooking with induction, as well as all of the other peripherals, fridges, lights, etc., with no worry at all, replenishing all the current using solar. Fantastic. But if it rains, cloudy, input current drops dramatically to the point where you don't even close to reach the amount of current putting back into the battery that you've taken out. So there's now a swing. You're now using more energy than you're putting back into the battery, so you have to go to the shops and buy gas. You understand what I'm saying here? You have to find some way of getting the energy back into the battery. Just like you've run out of gas and you need to go to the hardware at the next town and buy some gas so we can continue cooking. It's the same thing, really. It's the same problem. It's a similar problem, different solution. Therefore, if you are in this situation, you need to be able to store. How big are your gas bottles if you're still using gas? How big are your gas bottles? Those gas bottles that you're carrying, the capacity, so gas bottles should be measured in days. How many days cooking can you do with a set of gas bottles? That's pretty obvious to me. With electricity, it's not so much days, it's days divided by hours traveled to charge the batteries. It's a slightly different formula, but it's the same problem. So, I now have to get that battery recharged. If I can't store enough, I have to recharge it. If I can't recharge it easily, I need to store more. What does that mean? It means more expense. There are two big expenses when it comes to induction cooking. The inverter, high quality inverters, they're not particularly cheap. They're certainly more expensive than a gas burner. And they take room in the vehicle, and batteries can be very expensive, particularly if you're using lithium. Now, my conclusion, to be honest with you, is if you've got a battery bank of AGM batteries, forget about induction cooking. It's just that the batteries are just not suited to it. And the reason why the batteries aren't suited to it is that as a lead-based battery, as the current is drawn from it, its voltage drops. That's why you can use a voltmeter to get an idea of the state of a battery's charge, just by measuring the volt across the battery. You cannot do that with a lithium battery, because a lithium battery stays at optimal voltage right until it's 99% discharged, and only then will the voltage drop off, and it'll drop off very quickly. And between 99% and 100% discharge, the battery will turn itself off because of the internal battery system. The battery charge system built into the battery, not the external. They're called BMS, battery management systems, and they're built into every lithium battery. And they protect the battery from over-discharging, basically, to put it in a simple way, it stops it bursting into flames. All right? They are the reason why lithium have become safe. It's the internal battery management systems. So lithium has come of age. You might say, okay, well, it's easier to charge a AGM than a lithium. I guess it is, because you don't need special profiles, or the ordinary lead acid profiles we get in ordinary battery chargers will suffice perfectly with AGM, and they are not ideal for lithium. For example, if you put a lithium under the bonnet and charge it directly to the alternator, despite what some battery manufacturers claim, it's not a good idea. The high under bonnet temperatures will reduce your life of your battery. And one of the great things about lithium is they have a long life. You are diminishing that life by heating it up and cooling it down a lot underneath the engine bay. So, and because they're so expensive, you want the longest life. It's where their value doesn't look as bad as it. Look at the price and you go, it's really expensive. It's well over twice the price of an AGM. Well, it's going to last well over twice as long, and it's going to deliver well over twice the electric potential. Actually, it's about half the price of an AGM in real terms over time. But not if you put it underneath the engine bay. Then it isn't. And your alternator will never charge it properly. Now, this is quite complicated. Depends on the kind of alternator you have in your car. You have smart alternators, and it is quite complex. Let's put it again simply. You're not going to get an optimum charge unless the charger is optimized to lithium, and DC chargers are, almost all of them, optimized to lithium. The alternator is not. So that's to put it in a very simple term. So generally putting it underneath the bonnet is a bad idea, and charging it without a DC is another bad idea. If you don't want to go, if you really just don't want to go DC charging, don't bother with lithium. Actually, at the end of the day, you're fooling yourself. It'll work, but it'll work badly, and it'll give you bad value for money. So the end result is cost. You need to buy DC chargers. You need to have them wired up. If you're using something like the Egon DC hub, you can wire it yourself without thinking. You'll do it in an afternoon. But you have to do it. You have to run the cables. You have to fuse it. You have to, where are you going to store them? Now, of course, AGMs are considerably heavier than lithium, so you can, for the same weight, put in 3 times the battery capacity and 6 times the battery efficiency using lithium over AGM. So again, because of the weight issue, far more efficient. But they're expensive. So in this vehicle now, I'm completely over the top. I have 400 amp hour of Amptron lithium batteries. That's why I don't have a solar panel at the top on my roof. Why would I ever actually need a solar panel at the top? The only time I'm ever going to need to recharge these batteries is if I'm sitting at a place for more than 5 days and I'm inverter cooking. Only after about 4 or 5 days of very heavy battery usage will I actually start running out of current and I have to replenish that current. I use solar blankets. I'm not going to bother with something on the roof that is just going to, well, it's only going to work if I'm parked in the right direction anyway, so why bother? Just take a solar blanket. To me, it's a no-brainer. Let's get back to induction cooking after I've had a bit of coffee. For the expense, in terms of money, not necessarily in terms of space, very similar. Maybe a little bit more with gas burners because you have to carry the gas. Nothing in it that could positively sway one way or another, in my opinion. There's no big difference in terms of space. Expense, considerable if you're not running lithium already. Let's assume you are running lithium and you've got a fair battery pack. For example, you've got 200, and that's fairly common these days for a rig to have 200 amp hour of lithium. Should I go induction? Do you have space to put a fair-sized inverter? Because remember, the inverter cannot be enclosed in a box, it needs to be out in the open so it can cool. They get pretty warm. So they do take up a reasonable amount of space. The wiring. If you're going to do an inbuilt AC wiring system, in other words, anything that's not a simple extension lead, anything beyond that, in Australia anyway, you have to get an AC approved technician to do the wiring and it has to be signed off. That AC is the same as AC at home. It's exactly the same. It can shock you and it can kill you. There's no difference between AC once its system is plugged in and operational than AC at home. You have to have a system of, you need an earth trip basically, and this one has one. It has an override system that will trip in the event of an earth leakage. So it's safe. You do it yourself, is it going to be safe? You better know what you're doing, otherwise it's not safe. You might as well do your own work at home and risk your children's lives, even your life, from an electric shock because you don't know how to do it. It's a bad idea. Now I know in Australia we have laws. Fine, I'm not unhappy with that law. It's actually quite a good one. But in many other countries you can just do it yourself. You know how to do it. Get a Sparky to come and inspect your work. Really, your life is at stake. It's no different from home. All right. Expense. So that's expensive. You start getting people like that involved, it starts getting expensive. So we understand the expense in terms of battery space, capacity, buying the batteries, inverter, all the wiring. Now you've got it set up. Is it worth it? I cannot answer that because I still use gas. I have one burner and I used for cooking, for heating up this, I used my nice little pod coffee compressor thing which the inverter handles easily with my milk frother and make myself a lovely cup of coffee. Gwynn's tea, I used the jet ball because it was more convenient. I could have, very easily, if my electricity system, because I actually have to take out my induction cooker and plug it in to get it working. It's not like a caravan where it might be set up. If it was set up I would have boiled her water using an electric kettle, using the batteries. But I don't have it set up. So my choice of using gas or boiling her water using the inverter cooker was purely a matter of convenience. What's going to be quite faster and more convenient? I actually quite like my little gas boiler as well. So I kind of like it, but in terms of pure efficiency, not really any difference. So I could, as I am now, run my camp 99% of the time just with the inverter cooker, doing everything. But remember, I only have one. So what am I going to do if I need two and I don't have a fire, obviously? I'm going to need an alternative cooker. I could bring a second inverter cooker with me, or I could use my little water boiler and boil water for a pasta on my water boiler. It's very fast, very efficient, and works well. So I have chosen a hybrid system.
Induction cooking there's nothing romantic about it. I mean, it's not a glowing coals, it's not even gas. It's kind of like you're at home in your own kitchen. But there are definitely advantages to that.
And in terms of actually cooking, controlling the heat, good, bad, ugly, indifferent?
Good. Good. It took some getting used to because it is different. It's not the thing that you would normally do on a stove, take the pan off, because your stove turns off if you do that. It's only thanks to the contact with the pan that it actually runs. So you've got to kind of rethink things a bit.
So tell me something, in a camping environment where you're struggling with, because there's always wind when you're camping, almost always. Even now, it's not a lot of wind, but there is wind.
Yeah.
So managing your actual cooking and preparing the food, make a direct comparison if you were sitting here now with gas, electric.
Electric, please.
Electric, please.
Yeah, for camping. At home, in my own kitchen, gas.
No, we're talking
every day of the week, but we're camping.
We're camping.
Electric. So funny how the world has turned, hey?
Yeah. Well, there you have it. You see, I couldn't have answered that question. You like it now, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
You do. Yeah. The question is, would I do it again with this setup, as I am now? Would I go inverter cooking? And the answer is yes, I would. Because I actually think it's great. The convenience is fantastic. Really fantastic. The fact that it's easy to clean for me around a camp is a big deal. Yes, I would. I would do it again. But I'm not saying it's the be-all and end-all and you have to do it because it's so much better than cooking on gas. Yeah, in some ways it is. But in many ways, particularly the expense, it most certainly isn't. I have been editing here and I've realized that some of you are still going to be thinking, oh, I don't know, still don't know. Okay, I'm assuming you've got lithium in your vehicle at the moment. If you don't, then forget about it. Okay, and if cost is an issue, gas, far, far cheaper. All right, now, given that, you've got two factors you have to consider. Firstly, do you travel a lot? In other words, do you stay at one place a long time, or are you really reasonably regularly on the move? That's a big, big factor. The other big factor is, do you have a lot of sunshine where you're traveling? Okay, if you move a lot, means you're going to charge a lot. Okay, if you don't move a lot, means you have to find another way of charging, which is the sun. If you don't move a lot, and you don't have a lot of sun, forget about cooking with induction. You can still do it, but it's just the cost and the complexity. No, cooking with gas is far, far easier. But, well, that's my conclusion then. But if you don't move a lot and you've got lots of sun, buy extra solar blankets, cook with induction. If you move a lot, well, get a good DC-DC charger, so you can replenish the energy. But if you have neither of those things, then induction cooking is not really practical. I hope you can now come to a good conclusion.